Rather than compromise, let's do something more beneficial for all parties involved. With your Influence and Success Insight, I'm Bob Berg. We often hear that the best kind of agreement is one where both parties are willing to compromise. Of course, the person says. Isn't compromise a good thing? And I'd say that it depends upon the situation and on the context. Of course, there's a time and place for most everything, including compromise. In some respects, graceful compromise is essential. No relationship, business or personal, long survives without compromise being part of it from time to time. However, by and large, I suggest you don't want compromise to be your goal or first option. Why not? Well, in John David Mann's and my newest parable in the Go-Giver series, The Go-Giver Influencer, one of the mentors explained to his protege that compromise comes from a Latin word meaning everybody ends up with something someone else thought would be a good idea, and nobody ends up with what they really wanted. Obviously, we're joking there. It doesn't really mean that, but it might as well. In the kind of compromise the character is talking about, both parties give up on achieving their own true objectives, this out of a sense of futility. Since neither sees a pathway to a genuine win-win, both agree to settle for a sort of lose-lose. I'd go so far as to say that compromise, by its very nature, is lose-lose. Again, sometimes it's necessary, but it's still lose-lose because both parties are giving up something they really value for something they don't value as much. That's, by definition, lose-lose. The big problem comes when adopting the idea of compromise is simply the path of least resistance, a fallback alternative, if you will, to working toward a more fruitful and beneficial solution for everyone. And of course, the worst kind of compromise is when you compromise a core principle. Honesty, integrity, loyalty, truth, family, and so forth, for the sake of expediency or some other more base consideration. So rather than looking at compromising, I'd like for you to look at collaboration. Collaboration is the ultimate win-win. It's both parties getting more of what they do want. It's the ultimate 1 + 1 = 3. Again, is that always possible? No, but it is more often than we might think. And that's why I want it to be your first option, your goal. Collaboration rather than compromise. You've probably heard the story about the two siblings fighting over an orange. They both wanted it, but there was just one, so they had to compromise by each taking half. Of course, the crux of the story is that upon simple discussion afterwards, they both discovered they wanted the orange for two completely different reasons. One wanted the meat and juice of the orange to enjoy as a snack. The other needed the rind in order to complete a homework assignment. Had they only worked this out earlier, they both could have been fully satisfied instead of, at best, half satisfied and, at worst, resentful of the other. While this story may or may not have ever happened, many similar and far more reaching incidents happen every day. Whether in families, business, or politics, the same basic challenge is an ongoing part of life, and it often keeps us stuck in a mire of anger, frustration, and resentment. So you know what I'm going to ask you to do, and that is to look back at times that you may have compromised and just not felt really good about it. And ask yourself if there was a way that you possibly could have collaborated for a true win-win. And of course, now that you're even more cognizant of this, from now on, when compromise seems to be the most logical option, ask yourself and the other person how you could both attain what you're looking for. Collaboration rocks. With your Influence and Success Insight, I'm Bob Berg. Make it a great day.